Life in the busy compound. The sun rose like a hot drum over Onwu Street in Enugu. The compound woke up before the birds could finish their song. Buckets knocked against taps. Pestles hit mortars. Children raced past doorways with bare feet that slapped the ground like talking fish. In the center yard, two long clotheslines cut across the sky, stretched from a guava tree to the rough wall near the shared bathroom. On those lines, the colors of the compound told their stories: faded school uniforms, baby shawls, men's shirts with missing buttons, and bright wrappers that danced whenever the breeze blew. In room 3, Amara tied her headscarf and smiled at the small kingdom she had built with her own hands. She was 26, a tailor, and as gentle as rain after Harmattan. Her room was narrow but tidy. To one side stood a wooden bed, neatly dressed. To the other sat her pride, a humming sewing machine, a small shelf with thread cones like tiny rainbows, and a table where chalk, pins, and measuring tape slept like soldiers ready for duty. A plastic drum of water leaned near the door. Over it, she had pasted a paper where she wrote in clean letters, "Order does not kill." Amara loved beauty. Not the big kind that makes people proud, but the small kind that makes people breathe easier. She ironed her dresses until steam kissed the cloth and the cloth shone back like a mirror. She chose colors the way some people choose words, carefully. When she wore her gowns on Sundays, the sun itself seemed to stop and look twice. "Amara, your hand is blessed," older women would say. She always answered with a nod and a shy, "Thank you, Ma." The compound carried its own music. Mama, Cootie in room 7 waited every morning on a blue plastic chair, slicing vegetables with a knife that never seemed to finish its job. Her eyes were sharp like lizard eyes. She knew who came late in the night and who skipped house devotion. She saw everything, but spoke in slow riddles. "A goat that eats yam will meet the owner's stick," she liked to say, even when no goat or yam was near. There was Ngozi in room 5, sugar-sweet and always smiling. She loved to praise people the way market sellers praise their goods. "Sister Amara, you're dressed today? Heaven is jealous." She clapped when she talked, and her laughter spilled into other people's rooms like light. And Chisholm, the quiet student in room 2, kept her head bent over books. Her slippers barely made a sound. She greeted softly, washed quietly, and moved like a shadow that did not wish to disturb the wall. Amara liked all of them in the way you like the sun. You accept it because it is there, but you still close your eyes sometimes. That Tuesday, Amara finished a green dress that made her heart sing. The cloth was smooth and cool, the color deep like leaves after rain. She had stitched the waist to hold her gently and allowed the skirt to flow like a prayer. She washed it in soapy water until the bucket foamed like fresh palm wine. Then she pegged it in the middle of the line where the sun could bless it fully. She stood back and admired it. "You will shine on Sunday," she told the dress as if it could hear. Then life pulled her away. A child needed help with a torn school bag. A neighbor needed a quick alteration for a burial shirt. The day walked and ran, and by late afternoon the compound grew slow and gold. Amara stepped out to collect her dress. The line was dancing. The other clothes were clapping in, the wind, but the middle peg was empty. She blinked, looked left, looked right. The dress was not there. Maybe the peg broke. She checked the ground. Nothing. Maybe the wind threw it over the wall. She peered into the neighbor's yard and saw only a silent bicycle and a sleepy goat. She went behind the bathroom, where stray socks and handkerchiefs sometimes hid. Dust, leaves, a forgotten sandal. No dress. A small heat rose in her chest. "Maybe I moved it," she told herself. "Maybe I am tired." She checked her room again, from the back of the door to the last corner under the bed. No green, no dress, only the neat air that always followed her around. Who lost something? Mama Cootie's voice floated from the corridor. She had appeared, without Amara hearing her. It was a talent. My green dress, Amara said, trying to smile. Maybe Breeze carried it. Breeze carries light things, Mama Cootie replied. Not pride. Amara laughed softly, because what else could she do? She thanked the older woman and returned to her sewing machine. But as the needle moved, her mind did not follow. It stood, outside, staring at the empty space on the line where her dress had once danced. The next morning smelled of wood smoke and early stew. Amara washed a blue blouse with gold piping and a simple wrapper with small white flowers. She pegged them next to each other, counted the pegs like coins, and whispered a little prayer she made up on the spot. Lord, hold my clothes the way you hold the sky. She sat by her window to mend a customer's sleeve. Through the thin curtain, she could see the line, the guava tree, and the place where dust always gathered like gossip. Children ran past. The landlord's radio told old high-life stories. Nothing unusual happened until the sun reached for the roof. Then a neighbor shouted, "Kerosene cellar!" People scattered with bottles and small money. Amara stood up to get her own bottle. It was only 5 minutes, maybe less. She returned to the window and looked out of habit. Her blue blouse was gone. For a long moment, she felt nothing. It was like stepping into a room and forgetting why you came. Then the feeling came all at once, shock, then anger, then a heavy sadness that settled on her shoulders. She ran outside. Others followed, curious as chickens. She searched the ground, the bathroom corner behind the large drum where the landlord kept spare bamboo poles. Nothing. A child pointed under the guava leaves. Only a spoon and someone's lost bead. Maybe you did not hang it, Ngozi said with her sweet voice, touching Amara's arm. I forget things all the time. Amara wanted to believe that. She wanted to be careless, just for today. But she remembered the feel of the wet blouse in her hand, the pinch of the peg, the way the gold piping had flashed when she lifted it. She was not careless. She was careful like prayer. That night she did not sleep early. She sat by the window with a cup of tea that went cold many times. The compound breathed its normal breath. Late talk, soft quarrels, the sudden hush when the lights blinked and died and then returned. At some point, the moon climbed and hung like a small bowl above the yard. The line swayed and sang its thin song. Amara watched until her eyes grew heavy. By the time she lay down, a quiet vow had formed in her heart. Morning brought market noise from far away. Amara moved slower than usual. She swept, cooked a small pot of corn pap, and arranged her table. Customers came and went. She smiled at them because smiles are part of a tailor's work. But between stitches, she asked quiet questions. Chisholm, you passed the line yesterday evening, Abi. Yes, sister. I went to refill my water. Did you see any cloth drop? Chisholm's brow folded with sincere effort. No, sister. I would have picked it. Ngozi, you were singing yesterday. Amara tried later with a light laugh. Did my blouse dance and follow your song, Ngozi? Laughed, clapped, and said a joke about blouses that could hear rhythm. But her eyes slid away too quickly, like a fish escaping a hook. Mama Cootie only looked at Amara and said, When a pot cries, the fire understands. Watch your fire. By afternoon, a thin line of fear formed inside Amara's chest. Fear, and something like shame. A woman's clothes are not only cloth, they are respect. They are dignity you can wear. She did not have plenty, but what she cared for with 2 careful hands. Now someone was peeling her life from the line like fruit. That evening, she washed nothing. She folded her best gowns inside a basin and pushed the basin under her bed. She locked her door and sat on the floor with her back against it. She breathed slowly, the way she did when she cut expensive fabric. Her anger turned from fire to heat. It was no longer wild, it was ready. "A person who borrows without asking is a thief," she whispered to the quiet room. "And a thief who walks in daylight thinks nobody sees. But God sees, and I will see too." Outside, a lizard climbed the wall and nodded as if it agreed. Amara stood, pulled the curtain aside, and looked out at the clothes line again. It looked harmless, like a simple string. But she knew now it was a road where secrets walked. She pressed her palm to the window frame, felt the cool wood steady her, and made a simple plan in her mind. Tomorrow, the line would not only carry clothes, it would carry the first thread of truth. The disappearances continue. The morning sun rose over the compound with its usual noise and heat. But for Amara, the air felt different. She carried her basin of wet clothes to the line, her steps heavy. Each peg she clipped onto the string sounded like a warning bell. She no longer trusted the breeze, the shadows, or even the smiles of her neighbors. The line was no longer just a place to dry her clothes. It had become a battlefield. That day, she hung 3 things: a simple wrapper, a blouse with small red, flowers, and her best work skirt, black with gold buttons. She stood for a long time, arms folded, eyes scanning the compound as if daring anyone to come near. Children were chasing each other with empty cans. The caretaker was sweeping sand that never seemed to disappear, and Mama Cootie was slicing her endless vegetables on her chair. Everything looked normal, but Amara's heart whispered otherwise. Tried to distract herself by sewing. Her customer's fabric was a bright ankara with circles like suns. Her machine hummed and rattled, but every few minutes she stopped and rushed to the window, her eyes darting to the line. At one point she thought she saw the wrapper shift unnaturally, but it was only the wind twisting it. She sighed, rubbed her temple, and went back to stitching. By evening, when she stepped outside to collect her things, the blouse with red flowers was gone. Just gone. The wrapper and skirt were there, but the blouse had vanished as if it had grown wings. Amara stood, frozen, her hands trembling. For the second time, her heart fell into her stomach. She rushed around the yard, checking the dirt, the fence, even the gutter. Nothing. The blouse had disappeared into thin air. Neighbors gathered quickly, the way smoke gathers after a fire. "Amara, again?" Ngozi asked, her face full of sympathy but her eyes sharp with curiosity. "Ella," Mama Cootie muttered, shaking her head. "The eye that watches the sun too much will one day go blind. Watch your line, my daughter." Chisholm, the quiet student, peeked from her door with a book in her hand. She said nothing, but Amara noticed how her gaze lingered on the line before slipping back into her room. Gossip began to fly like birds in the air. Maybe a spirit is involved, or maybe a jealous person. "Ah, in this compound, you cannot shine too much, oh." Amara bit her lip, anger pressed against her chest like a heavy stone. "This is no spirit. This is a person. Someone is deliberately stealing from me suspicions." Grow that night, Amara could not sleep. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the compound's noises, someone coughing, a baby crying, sandals slapping the corridor floor. The more she thought, the sharper her suspicion grew. Could it be Ngozi, with her sugar-coated words and sudden new clothes? Amara remembered a scarf Ngozi once tied that looked painfully close to her missing green dress. Or maybe Mama Cootie, the woman who knew everything but never admitted seeing anything. Could she be hiding the truth with her endless proverbs? Then, there was Chisholm, quiet, always studying, never mingling. People often said, the quiet ones are the most dangerous. Could her silence be a mask for something else? Amara's eyes burned from thinking. She sat up, whispered a prayer for patience, and promised herself that she would find out who it was, no matter how long it took. Strange hints. The next day, she washed only one gown, a deep purple one with silver trim. She pegged it carefully in the middle of the line and then pretended to ignore it. From her window, she kept watch. Hours passed. Neighbors came and went, children fetched water. Nothing suspicious. But just as the sun leaned towards evening, Amara noticed something. Ngozi passed the line twice, humming a tune, her eyes darting quickly toward the purple gown before shifting away. Later, Amara saw Chisholm return from school and pause briefly near the line, as if counting the pegs with her eyes. Amara's suspicion grew like a fire catching dry grass. She began keeping a notebook. On one page she wrote, Tuesday, green dress gone, Wednesday, blue blouse gone, Thursday. Watch purple gown, she left space to fill later. But when night came, the purple gown was still on the line. She sighed with relief, but also confusion. Why had nothing happened today? Was the thief watching her too? The third blow. By Saturday, Amara dared to wash more clothes again. She pegged 2 wrappers and a church gown she had only worn once. As she pinned the last peg, she looked around and spoke loudly so everyone could hear. God that watches over the sparrow, please watch my clothes today. Whoever tries to steal them, let your eyes catch them. Some neighbors laughed nervously, others muttered, Amen. But by evening, the church gown was gone. Amara froze, her chest rising and falling. This time, there was no doubt. Someone was targeting her piece by piece, like they wanted to strip her completely of dignity. Her anger boiled. She stomped across the yard, knocking on doors. Did anyone see my gown? She shouted. It was right here this morning. But everyone shook their heads. Ngozi swore she was at choir practice. Mama Kuti simply said, The moon knows what the sun hides. Chisholm blinked at her with wide, innocent eyes and said, I was at the library. Amara stood in the middle of the compound, hands on her waist, scanning each face like a soldier at war. Her voice trembled, but it was strong. Enough is enough. Whoever is stealing my clothes, your day is coming. You cannot hide forever. The sun that hides in the cloud must come out again. The compound fell into a heavy silence. Only the guava leaves rustled in the wind. The vow that night, Amara sat cross-legged on her bed, staring at the half-empty basket where her clothes once overflowed. Tears pricked her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She brewed a strong cup of tea, sipped it slowly, and allowed her anger to settle into determination. She had tried patience. She had tried watching. She had even prayed. Still, the thief was 2 steps ahead. Now it was time to think differently. She would no longer wait to be a victim. If you want my clothes, thief, then you will take the one I prepare for you. She whispered this vow into the night, her voice firm, her heart steady. Outside, the compound was quiet, but the guava tree creaked as if it had heard her. The battle had begun. The trap. The next morning began like any other in the compound, with buckets thumping against taps and women shouting at children who refused to bathe for school. But inside her small room, Amara was not moving with her usual calm. Her heart was hot. Her hands shook as she folded her remaining clothes into a corner of her bed. Each missing blouse and gown felt like a scar. By now, she was tired of being quiet. She whispered to herself, If the thief wants my clothes, then today they will meet my hand. A clever plan. Amara knew she could not keep washing her best clothes only for them to vanish. So she decided to sacrifice an old skirt she no longer liked. It was faded at the edges and a little loose at the waist. Perfect bait. She washed it thoroughly, spread it with care, and pegged it neatly on the line as if it were the most valuable cloth she owned. But this time, she was not going to walk away. She dragged a wooden stool near the window, sat with her sewing kit, and positioned herself like a hawk. From there, she could see everything: the guava tree, the tap, the bathroom wall, and most importantly, the clothesline. The hours dragged slowly. The compound bustled with its normal chaos. Mama Cootie's knife tapped endlessly on vegetables. Ngozi strolled past twice, humming a gospel tune too loudly. Chisholm went out with her books, her face buried in notes. Even the caretaker walked across the yard twice, scratching his head as though thinking of nothing at all. The old skirt swung lazily in the sun, but nobody touched it. By afternoon, Amara's legs had gone numb from sitting. Sweat gathered at the back of her neck, but she refused to move. She was determined to wait. Then, footsteps. Her heart jumped. She leaned forward, careful not to make the stool creak. But it was only one of the landlord's little children, chasing a chicken with a stick. The boy screamed with laughter as feathers flew, and Amara nearly cried with frustration. She bit her lip. "The thief is clever," she thought. "They know I am watching." Calling a friend for help by evening, her eyes were red from staring. That was when she decided to call her closest ally in the compound, Ada, the lively girl from room 6. Ada was bold, loved drama, and had a tongue sharper than pepper. When Amara told her about the missing clothes and her failed watch, Ada slapped her palm on her knee. "Ah, so someone thinks your wardrobe is a free boutique? No, my sister, we must catch them." Together they made a plan. They would take shifts. One would watch in the morning, the other in the afternoon. The thief would not escape both of them. The next day, Amara hung the same old skirt again. She left the compound for a quick delivery, while Ada sat under the mango tree with a broom in her hand, pretending to sweep. She even hummed to look natural, though her eyes stayed fixed on the line. Hours later, when Amara returned, she found Ada dozing on the stool, her broom forgotten, flies buzzing around her head. Amara shook her awake. "Did you see anything?" Ada yawned. "Nothing, oh, except one breeze that carried the skirt down. I put it back." Amara pressed her palm to her forehead. Clearly, Ada was not born for undercover work. The gossip spreads by now. The entire compound had heard of Amara's missing clothes. Some people pitied her, while others laughed behind her back. Children sang little rhymes when she passed. "Cloth thief, where are you? Come and dance with Amara's gown, too." The caretaker even joked, "If na me, I for buy padlock for wrapper." The joke nearly made Amara pour her basin of soapy water over his head. Still, she refused to give up. A night watch that evening, Amara decided to try again, but this time with more seriousness. She washed the skirt once more, pegged it to the line, and waited until nightfall. When the compound grew quiet, she slipped outside barefoot and hid behind the guava tree. The moonlight painted everything silver. Crickets chirped. Somewhere, a baby coughed in its sleep. She crouched there, her body stiff, her eyes fixed on the line. She imagined herself a hunter waiting for prey. Mosquitoes feasted on her arms and neck, but she refused to move. Every sound made her heart jump. The rustle of leaves, the soft creak of a door, the shuffle of slippers, then footsteps. Slow, careful. Someone was coming. Her breath caught. She gripped the tree trunk, her nails digging into the bark. From the shadows emerged the landlord's goat. It wandered lazily, sniffed at the bucket near the bathroom, then rubbed its horns against the line. The skirt swayed dangerously. Amara nearly screamed in frustration. She waved her arms, shooed the goat away, and slumped against the tree. The thief was too clever. They struck only when no one was watching. The breaking point. The next morning brought the final insult. Amara had washed 2 fresh gowns, a yellow, one with lace trim, and a wrapper she had only worn once to church. She pegged them carefully, then went inside to cook porridge. When she returned an hour later, both were gone. Her legs nearly gave way. Her basket, once full of color, was now almost empty. The thief was not only bold, but merciless. This time, Amara did not cry. She did not even shout. She stood in the middle of the compound with her hands on her waist, her eyes sweeping across every face. The other tenants froze under her gaze. Some shifted uncomfortably, others looked away. She knew the thief was there among them, pretending to be innocent. Her voice rang out, firm and steady. "Whoever is stealing my clothes, your day is coming. You think you are clever, but the trap you fall into will shock this whole compound. I will not rest until you are caught." The compound grew silent. Even the children stopped playing. The guava leaves rustled like they too were waiting for what would come next. The idea forms. That night, Amara boiled water for tea and sat cross-legged on her bed. She stared at the empty spaces in her basket, her anger turning into something sharper. Watching the line had failed. Ada's help had failed. Patience had failed. If ordinary eyes cannot catch this thief, she thought, then I must use something else, something that will make the thief reveal themselves. She looked around. Her small room. Her gaze landed on the palm oil jar near her stove. Then she remembered the butcher in the market, the smell of fresh blood, the way people feared anything that looked like juju. A slow smile spread across her face. She whispered into the night. "Since you want to steal, thief, I will give you something to steal. But when you touch it, you will not be able to hide." The idea grew in her mind like fire in dry grass. By the time she lay down to sleep, she knew exactly what she would do. Tomorrow, the real trap would begin. The spiritual close. The sun had not fully climbed the sky when Amara woke with a new fire in her chest. It was no longer the dull pain of loss. It was something sharper, like the edge of a blade. The compound hummed with its usual mourning. Sounds, metal basins clanging at the tap, babies crying, women shouting, "Leave that bucket!" But inside Amara's small room, another kind of plan was taking shape. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her nearly empty basket. The gowns that once filled it were gone, leaving only a few faded wrappers. She rubbed her palm slowly across the fabric as if saying goodbye. Then she stood, washed her face, and tied her scarf tight. "This thief wants drama," she whispered to herself. "Let me give them drama they will never forget." Gathering the ingredients, Amara knew what she wanted to do, but she needed the right materials. That afternoon, she carried a basket to the market. She bought peppers, tomatoes, and onions for cover, then slipped quietly into the butcher's section. The air there was thick with blood and smoke. Flies buzzed greedily. She spotted Uncle Jide, a meat seller who often gave her bone pieces for soup. Leaning close, she lowered her voice. "Uncle, please, I need small goat blood. Just a bottle." Jide raised his eyebrow. "For cooking?" "Yes," Amara lied with a calm face. "For cooking." He shrugged, scooped fresh blood into an old plastic bottle, and handed it to her. "Use it quick before it spoils." Amara paid him quietly, tucked the bottle deep inside her basket, and hurried home. Back in her room, she locked the door and brought out everything: palm oil, goat blood, a small bowl of ashes from her cooking stove, and the oldest wrapper she still owned, bright enough to tempt the thief, but not precious, enough to break her heart if something went wrong. The ritual of fear. The room smelled of smoke and iron as Amara worked. She spread the wrapper across a basin and poured palm oil across the edges until it soaked deep red. Then, with a trembling hand, she dipped a stick into the bottle of goat blood and streaked jagged lines across the cloth. The marks looked like claw scratches. The smell was sharp, almost metallic. Even Amara's own stomach turned at it. But she kept going. She scattered ashes across the wrapper, smearing them with her fingers until the cloth looked as though it had been dragged through a shrine. For the finishing touch, she whispered words she made up on the spot, nonsense syllables that sounded dark and heavy. She didn't believe in charms, but she knew the power of fear. And in a compound full of gossip, the sight of a juju wrapper was enough to shake even the boldest thief. When she finally held up her work, even she shivered. The wrapper no longer looked like ordinary cloth. It looked cursed. She smiled. "Let us see who will dare touch this one." Hanging the bait Amara waited until the evening, when the compound was most alive, women fetching water, children running around, men returning from work. She walked out of her room boldly, wrapper in hand. Some neighbors looked up immediately, curious. She pegged it right in the middle of the line where everyone could see. The red stains glistened in the sun. The ashes clung to the fabric, and the smell drifted faintly through the air. A hush spread slowly across the corridor. Mama Cootie, slicing vegetables on her chair, narrowed her eyes. "Amara, what cloth is this one again?" Amara smiled faintly. "This one belonged to my grandmother. She prayed with it for 7 days before she died. I decided to wash it." Ngozi, who always had too much sugar in her words, stepped back quickly. "Eh, no wonder it looks different." The children stared wide-eyed. One little boy whispered, "It looks like blood." Amara only shrugged, pegged the wrapper tighter, and walked back to her room. She knew the gossip would now spread faster than Harmattan fire, and that was exactly what she wanted. The waiting game. That night, Amara sat by her window, pretending to adjust her sewing threads. Her eyes, however, never left the line. The wrapper swayed under the moonlight, dark and terrifying. Nobody dared to go near. Even Mama Cootie, who usually touched everyone's laundry out of habit, avoided it completely. Hours passed. The compound grew quiet. Dogs barked far away. A cock crowed too early, confused. And then, movement. Amara's heart jumped. From behind the tap area, a slim figure emerged. She recognized the walk instantly. Ifunanya, the flashy tenant from Room 4. Ifunanya was the type of woman who always wore new outfits, yet never seemed to have money. Her earrings sparkled, her hairstyles changed weekly, and her smile was sharp enough to cut. Amara held her breath. Ifunanya looked left, then right. The corridor was quiet. She bent to adjust her basin as though rinsing it, but her eyes flicked again and again to the wrapper. In one quick motion, she stretched her hand, yanked the wrapper off the line, folded it roughly, and shoved it under, a towel in her basin. Then she walked briskly back to her room, pretending nothing had happened. Amara nearly gasped. "So it is you?" But she did not shout. Not yet. The real drama would unfold inside Ifunanya's room. The Screaman hour passed. Amara remained still, ears straining for any sound. Then it came. A piercing scream shattered the compound. A basin crashed. Doors flew open as neighbors rushed out. "Jesus, what happened?" someone shouted. Amara stepped out calmly, pretending to be confused. She followed the crowd to Ifunanya's door. Inside, Ifunanya sat on the floor, trembling. The wrapper lay. In the center of the room, blood-streaked, oily, and smelling like sacrifice. "My hand! My chest is hot!" Ifunanya cried, shaking her fingers violently. "It followed me! It followed me into my room!" Gasps filled the air. Women crossed themselves. Some muttered prayers. Children hid behind their mothers. Mama Cootie pointed with her knife. "I said it! Some cloths are not ordinary. This one is carrying fire!" Ngozi clutched her wrapper tightly around herself. "Amara, is this not your grandmother's cloth?" Amara stepped forward slowly, her face calm but her eyes sharp. "Yes, my grandmother prayed with it for 7 nights. Whoever touches it with wicked hands. Only God knows what will happen." The neighbors gasped again. All eyes turned to Ifunanya, who was now weeping, her pride melted into fear. The turning of the tide whispers turned into chatter. So, Ifunanya has been stealing the clothes all this while? Ah, no wonder she always dresses new. God has finally exposed her. The caretaker scratched his head, looking embarrassed. Ifunanya, after all the warnings, is it true? Ifunanya tried to speak, but her voice broke. I only... It was a mistake. Mama Cootie cut her off with a hiss. Mistake does. Not fold cloth and hide it under towel. Laughter, sharp and cruel, rippled through the compound. Amara stood silently at the back, watching with satisfaction. Her plan had worked. The thief had revealed herself, and fear had done the rest. But this was only the beginning. For Amara knew that once gossip entered a compound, it never left quietly. And by the next morning, Ifunanya's shame would spread beyond Onwu Street like smoke in dry season. The exposure, the night of Ifunanya's scream, was only the beginning. By the next morning, Onwu Street compound was a marketplace of gossip. Buckets clanged at the tap, but every conversation ended with the same sentence. Did you hear what happened to Ifunanya last night? Some swore they saw flames dancing on her hands. Others insisted the wrapper had levitated from her basin and flown back to her room. Children skipped through the corridor singing, Ifunanya touched juju cloth, fire catch her hand, oh! Ifunanya did not come out that morning. Her door stayed locked, though her shadow shifted behind the curtain when anyone passed. Inside her own room, Amara folded her remaining clothes with a deep satisfaction. For the first time in weeks, she felt peace settling over her chest like cool water. But she also knew the battle was not over. In a compound where mouths moved faster than feet, shame spread like floodwater, and Ifunanya would have to face it. The landlord's meeting by midday, the landlord, Mr. Naji, arrived. He was a short man with a belly that pushed against his, shirt buttons and a voice that carried like a church bell. His wife had already told him the whole story, and his face was tight with anger as he stood in the center of the compound. "Everybody gather here," he shouted, clapping his hands. "This compound is not a shrine. I will not allow spiritual wahala inside my property." Tenants shuffled out with their stools and buckets, sitting in a wide circle. Mama Cootie perched on her plastic chair, slicing vegetables as if the meeting were background music. Ngozi clutched her scarf, pretending to be shocked. Even Chisholm, the quiet student, slipped out of her room with her book pressed to her chest. Finally, Ifunanya stepped out, her face pale, her hair untidy and her lips trembling. She avoided every eye and sat at the far edge of the circle. Mr. Naji cleared his throat. "We are here because of what happened last night. I have heard that Amara's wrapper, one that belonged to her late grandmother, was stolen and found in Ifunanya's room. Is this true?" A murmur swept through the crowd. All eyes turned to Amara. She stood slowly, her voice calm but firm. "Yes, sir. The wrapper was mine. It was the last thing my grandmother left me before she died. I washed it and hung it. It disappeared, and we all heard the scream when it reappeared in Ifunanya's room." The crowd gasped. Someone whispered, "Ah, so it was truly a spiritual cloth." Mr. Nanaji turned to Ifunanya. "What do you have to say for yourself?" Ifunanya's eyes darted around like a trapped bird. It was a mistake. I only carried it because I thought..." Before she could finish, Mama Cootie's knife slammed against her chopping board. Mistake? Mistake does not fold wrapper and hide it under towel. Mistake does not wear other people's clothes to Sunday. "Service, you have been stealing all along!" Laughter broke out. Even some of the men could not hold back. Ngozi clapped her hands dramatically. "God has exposed you, Ifunanya. How can a grown woman behave like a pickpocket?" Ifunanya's face flushed red. She stood quickly, pointing at Amara. "She is lying. That wrapper was ordinary. She only smeared it with something to disgrace me." But the crowd was no longer on her side. One young man shouted, "Then why were you the one holding it in your basin?" Another added, "If it was ordinary, why were you screaming like someone poured hot pepper on you?" The compound erupted into laughter again. Mr. Naji raised his hand for silence. "From today, let it be clear, anyone caught stealing another person's property will pay a fine of 10,000 naira and sweep this whole compound for 1 week. Ifunanya, consider this your warning. Next time, you will pack out." The crowd clapped, some with genuine support, others with hidden glee. Ifunanya's lips quivered, but she said nothing. She stormed back into her room, slamming the door so hard the corridor echoed, the neighbors' mockery. That evening, the compound turned into a stage. Children ran around chanting, "Ifunanya thief, rapper thief, juju catch her hando." Women whispered as they pounded yam. Men laughed while playing draft under the guava tree. Whenever Ifunanya stepped outside, heads turned. Someone would always mutter, "Hold your clothes, oh, she is coming." Ngozi, pretending to be helpful, told anyone who would listen, "I always suspected her. How can one person wear new clothes every week without a job? Now we know." Even quiet Chisholm smiled, faintly as she passed Amara's room. For the first time, Amara felt the compound standing behind her, protecting her dignity. But deep inside, she knew Ifunanya would not let the shame rest. The attempt to clear her name. 3 days later, Ifunanya finally stepped out with her hair braided neatly and her face painted with powder to hide the stress. She carried a shiny new bucket and walked into the yard, her chin high. "My people," she began, her voice trembling but loud enough for all to hear. "I know there has been misunderstanding. Everyone believes I am a thief, but I am not. To prove my innocence, from today I will be hanging my own clothes outside day and night. If anything disappears, you will all know I was never the problem." The compound burst into murmurs. Some laughed outright, others leaned forward to watch. Mama Kuti shook her head. "This one wants to tempt her own shadow." But Ifunanya ignored them. She washed a bright skirt she had boasted about owning since Christmas and hung it proudly on the line. It swayed in the wind like a flag of defiance. The neighbors pretended to mind their business, but every eye in the compound kept drifting back to the skirt. Even the children stopped their games, waiting for something to happen. Hours passed. Evening came. The skirt remained untouched. Ifunanya's smile widened. She began singing loudly, her voice echoing through the corridor. Amara sat quietly at her window, watching. Her eyes narrowed. She knew Ifunanya's game. The woman was trying to undo the shame, to prove she was never guilty. But truth has a way of showing itself when least expected. The wind's betrayal. Just before nightfall, a sudden wind swept through the compound. Doors slammed shut, plastic buckets rolled, and papers flew like frightened birds. Ifunanya's precious skirt lifted off the line and fell directly onto Amara's freshly washed white bed sheets. Worse, Ifunanya, who had been drinking malt and chewing suya earlier, rushed out with oily hands to grab her skirt. In her haste, she smeared greasy fingerprints across Amara's clean sheets. Amara froze. Her eyes widened. The sheet was ruined. She stepped outside, her voice ringing like a bell. "So it is not enough that you were stealing my clothes before. Now you want to destroy the little I have left." The compound exploded into noise. Some shouted it was an accident. Others whispered that the spirit of the juju rapper was still following Ifunanya. But the loudest moment came when the landlord's wife stepped forward, pointing at the skirt. "Wait, Ifunanya, where did you even get this skirt? I can swear I saw Amara wearing the same one last year." Fool. Compound fell silent. Heads turned. Eyes widened. Amara folded her arms slowly and said, her voice calm but cutting, "Exactly. That was my Christmas skirt 2 years ago." The neighbors erupted. "Ah!" they shouted together like a chorus. Ifunanya's face drained of color. Her lips moved, but no words came. That night, the mockery reached a new level. Everywhere. She turned, voices followed. Check your bucket, she may carry it, oh. Hide your wrapper, Ifunanya is coming. Her plan to prove innocence had collapsed into fresh disgrace. The end of pretending. By the next morning, Ifunanya stopped coming out. Her curtain stayed closed. The only sounds from her room were muffled sobs at night. Neighbors whispered that she cooked in secret and washed her clothes at midnight to avoid more shame. Amara, meanwhile, washed her best gown and hung it proudly on the line. For the first time in weeks, she slept peacefully, knowing no one would dare touch it again. But deep in her heart, she felt the story was not over. Ifunanya's pride would not allow her to bow quietly, and she was right, because trouble has a way of finding those who refuse to change. Karma and peace. The humiliation of the skirt had broken something inside Ifunanya. For days after, she stayed hidden behind her locked door. Sometimes, in the stillness of the night, neighbors could hear her crying. Other times, they swore she was muttering prayers or curses beneath her breath. But in the daylight, silence swallowed her room. The compound, however, was alive with her story. Children teased with songs, women laughed as they pounded yam, and even men shook their heads at her fall. Clothesline thief, they whispered whenever she passed quickly to fetch water. No matter how hard she tried to walk with dignity, shame clung to her like sweat in harmattan. Amara, on the other hand, felt a lightness she had not known in months. For the first time, she hung her best wrapper, a gold and purple masterpiece, on the line without fear. The morning sun kissed it, the evening breeze rocked it, and when she collected it at night, it was still there. Her heart, which had once been heavy with suspicion, now danced with freedom. But peace, as Amara soon learned, rarely stays in a noisy compound for long. The arrival of Mama Peace. One Saturday, the landlord's wife called everyone together. She cleared her throat proudly and announced, "My younger sister from the village will be staying with us for some months. Please treat her with respect. She is a widow, and she does not tolerate nonsense." The compound buzzed with whispers. The younger sister, known as Mama Peace, arrived that very afternoon. She was a tall woman with strong arms, eyes that scanned like torches, and a voice that boomed like a town crier's. She greeted each tenant firmly, no extra smiles, no unnecessary words. From the first day, it was clear Mama Peace was no ordinary woman. She rose early, swept her corner of the compound spotless, and eyed every passerby as if measuring their soul. If she saw children scattering buckets or adults leaving litter, she would scold them instantly. Some feared her, others respected. Her Amara, watching quietly from her window, thought, "This one does not bend easily. Even Ifunanya will think twice before trying her tricks, but arrogance is a sickness that does not heal quickly." The priceless wrapper. A week after Mama Peace's arrival, she washed her most prized possession, a bright red George lace wrapper that her late husband had gifted her before he died. She scrubbed it carefully, rinsed it with perfumed soap, and shook it until it gleamed. Then, with a loud voice meant for all to hear, she hung it on the clothesline. As she pegged it, she declared, "This wrapper is worth more than some people's entire wardrobe. Let me see the hand that will dare touch it." Neighbors chuckled, nervously. Amara smiled into her palm. Even the children, usually playful, kept their distance from the wrapper as though it had its own watchful eyes. But Ifunanya was listening too. She sat in her room, her pride stinging like salt in an open wound. Each word of Mama Peace's declaration felt like a dare aimed straight at her chest. "This wrapper is worth more than your wardrobe." The words refused to leave her ears. Night, when the compound slept and the moon painted shadows across the walls, a dangerous thought grew in her heart. If I wear that wrapper, everyone will see I am still the finest. They will forget this shame. The final mistake. It was past midnight when Ifunanya crept out. She moved silently, her slippers in her hand, her eyes darting left and right. The compound was quiet, except for the croak of distant frogs. The wrapper swayed gently on the line, glowing under the moonlight. She reached out, fingers trembling, not with fear, but with greed. The moment her hand touched the cloth, a deafening voice shattered the night. "Thief!" Ifunanya screamed and stumbled back. From behind the guava tree, Mama Peace leapt forward with the force of a soldier. In one hand, she held a giant torchlight that blazed into Ifunanya's face. In the other, a long koboko whip. Before Ifunanya could explain, the first lash cracked through the air and landed on her back. She yelped in pain. After all the disgrace, "In this compound, you still have the heart to steal again?" Mama Peace roared. Her voice was so loud that every door flew open at once. Tenants poured into the yard, half asleep but wide-eyed. They gasped at the sight. Ifunanya crouched on the ground, the wrapper half gripped in her hands. Mama Peace standing tall with her whip raised high. The crowd's judgment. The compound erupted into chaos. Neighbors shouted over one another, "Aha! So it was you again. This girl will not change." Even Juju was not enough for her greed. Children squealed with laughter, clapping as if watching a drama. Mama Cootie shook her head and muttered, "A goat that eats yam will always return to the barn no matter how many times it is beaten." Ngozi, always eager to shine, shouted, "Landlord, a beg, this one is finished. She must leave this compound today." The landlord, who had rushed out in his night wrapper, did not argue. His face was thunderous. "Ifunanya, pack your things. I gave you warning. We need peace in this house. By tomorrow morning you must go." Ifunanya's mouth opened, but no words came. Her face was wet with tears, her pride shattered. For once, even her tongue had failed her. The exit of Ifunanya by sunrise, the compound gathered again, this time to watch Ifunanya leave. She dragged her bags out, her eyes swollen from weeping. No one helped her. Some tenants muttered insults under their breath. Others simply shook their heads. The children, merciless in their innocence, sang the clothes thief rhyme until her shadow disappeared down the street. When her door finally shut behind her, the compound released a sigh of relief. "Peace has returned," Mama Peace declared, dusting her hands as though she had finished a long battle. Amara's peace, in the days that followed, Amara's life returned to normal. She washed her clothes with ease, hanging them boldly under the sun. No wrapper disappeared, no gown vanished. Even her neighbors treated her with new respect. Sometimes, when she spread her best gowns, she would stand for a moment and watch them sway, a smile tugging her lips. She felt stronger now, wiser. One evening, as she sat by her sewing machine, Mama Cootie passed and said, "You see, my daughter, a thief may run fast, but the truth runs faster. In this life, patience and wisdom will always win." Amara nodded, her heart full. She remembered the pain of losing her clothes, the frustration of waiting, the boldness of her trap, and the victory that followed. She had turned her anger into courage, and in the end, truth had fought on her side. The proverb, the compound, settled into calm once more. Amara whispered a lesson to herself, one she would carry forever. The one who steals in secret will one day be exposed in the open sun. And with that, she closed her window, folded her last gown, and finally, after weeks of turmoil, slept in peace.